Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about Confluence, which is a boundary disturbance in Gestalt therapy. And I wanted to talk about this because it's definitely something that I'm thinking about very often now as a therapist because I tend to be confluent with my clients. Honestly, it's like on my mind all the time when I'm seeing a client. So, which is why I wanted to kind of talk about it because I was like, I should learn more about this. So if I'm going to learn about it, why not like make a video about it? This is Confluence. Confluence is basically a merging or dissolving of the contact boundary that leads to a lack of differentiation from the other. In psychodynamics, this is kind of like enmeshment. Basically, you're one and of the same with the other. Yes, and so like as a therapist, this is when I'm like so attuned with my client that like it'd be like 80 to 90% of my attention awareness is all outwards towards the client, and I'm like barely noticing anything going on with myself. I would call that confluence. I'm confluent with the client. It's not always bad though. Therapists do need to move in and out of confluence to understand and empathize with the client. I think when I am confluent with a client, like the client can tell that I'm like synced in. I'm like with the client right there, you know? So I think it is a very useful and beneficial tool to have as a therapist. It also allows us to participate in family and groups to experience belonging without the need to differentiate. So again, it is beneficial to be able to be in confluence with a person or a group because it helps you feel like you're together and you're like one of the same. There's definitely some situations where it's a boundary disturbance and it's not great that like you're in confluent with someone. So it prevents us from discovering our own resources and understanding our needs. So me as a therapist, if I'm like the whole session, 50 minutes of it, 90% of my attention is on the client, I'm not aware of what's going on with myself. And sometimes as a therapist, it's really helpful to be attuned to most of the time, it's helpful as a therapist to be attuned to myself and my needs because sometimes that can be helpful for the client. Let's say the client is super not grounded and is like starting to get into like a panic state. If I'm confluent with that, I'm gonna also feel that way. In those situations, it could be helpful for me to be more attuned with myself and be like, okay, I need to feel extra grounded so that I can share some of this with the client. Another reason why this could be a boundary disturbance or why it sometimes is a boundary disturbance is because difference is denied. Basically, you're just one, you're together, you're one of the same, and so there's no real contact between two different people because you're the same. There's also cultural differences when it comes to people's relationship with confluence. So Western cultures tend to be conflict phobic. We're individualistic, and so we like to differentiate ourselves from others. Collectivist cultures, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. It emphasizes cohesiveness of a group and that being more important sometimes than individual needs. So signs of confluence. 1 is difficulty saying no. 2 is avoiding conflict to remain in harmony. 3 is a felt sense of losing touch with yourself. So for me, I experience confluence as this last one, the felt sense of losing touch with myself. When I notice like I don't know what I need, I don't know how I feel, I don't know, like I don't have a sense of who I am in the moment, that's when I know I'm confluent because it typically means all of my attention is on somebody else or something else. Yeah, like I would say I tend to be confluent with my clients, and so it's been helpful for me to think of ways to be able to come back to myself and be with the client. I think I would like to learn how to be be attuned to the client, but also be very much like in my own body. There's like a list of things that I do to help me kind of like ground myself. The most important one is probably noticing my physical sensations. So I get a lot of resourcing from noticing my physical body. For me, it's specifically like noticing my core area or like clenching my abs and like this top of the spine area. If I'm aware of those parts of my body, I'm usually not confluent with the person because I don't know, something about like those parts of my body really helped me like focus in on myself. Another way to not be confident with someone is to observe and state differences. So if I'm noticing the client is like super stressed out and I'm starting to feel stressed out, I can say, I'm noticing that you're stressed out. By verbalizing that, like, I am here and I'm noticing you over there, that sometimes helps with not being confident. Something else is monitoring energy levels. So me observing somebody else is also another example of like me separating myself from somebody else. I know my clinical director really gets a lot of support from imagining a protective boundary. So she kind of imagines like a bubble around herself that kind of like is a force field that like kind of reflects bad energy sometimes, you know. At times when she feels like she needs that, she kind of like imagines something that protects her, that doesn't like, seep in like client things into her little bubble. And then lastly, I like sometimes notice that when I take notes, I tend to take more notes and focus my attention on like my writing or literally like any other object around me instead of looking at the client. That helps me kind of like create more distance and kind of like bring it back to myself. Yeah, those are the things that have been helping me. Other things are, like I said, I use my little oil thing. I recently got like the peppermint one, so it's very cooling. So sometimes I put it on the top of my spine and I notice that cooling effect. And again, when I'm confident, I have no idea that it's like cooling at all. I don't really feel that. But when I'm really in touch with myself, I notice that like, there's like some cooling sensation at the top of my spine. So that's Confluence. This is one of the boundary adjustments, boundary disturbances that is highlighted in Gestalt therapy. And hopefully I'll do more of these types of like, Gestalt topics, because I'm starting to gain more interest in the theory of Gestalt. I feel like the first year and a half, I've been focused on just like being with the client and noticing what's coming up for me, and that is really helpful. And I'm noticing that I'm getting a lot more insecure. I would feel better as a therapist if I had more theory to kind of like use as a scaffold to being with the client. Sometimes I've been kind of wary of like using too much theory, especially in the beginning, because I feel like a lot of therapists use that as a crutch, for feeling like they are incompetent in a session. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to kind of sit with what happens if like the client is stuck. I don't want to immediately be like, oh, well, here's the theory. Sometimes it's super beneficial to just like be stuck with the client. And that really helps the client kind of like get unstuck. Just being with the stuckness and like sitting with that sometimes really helps. So anyways, I've become more interested in theory and Gestalt theory. So hopefully I'll do more of these. Let me know in the comments if you like them. If there's like a specific Gestalt topic or something that you're interested in, let me know and maybe I'll take a look at it. Okay, bye.